The mockery of the cosmos, the galactic tribunal chamber stretched upward for kilometers, its walls made from compressed starlight that had been harvested from dying suns. Admiral Thomas Walker stood at the center of the vast room, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his 40 years of service to Earth's fleet. Around him, representatives from 23 advanced civilizations looked down from their elevated platforms, their forms ranging from crystalline entities that sang in frequencies beyond human hearing to gaseous beings that existed as sentient storms. Walker had prepared for this moment for 5 years. Earth had sent their best diplomat, their most decorated military officer, and their most brilliant scientist, all rolled into one person. He wore humanity's finest dress uniform, decorated, with medals from a dozen successful first contact missions. But standing there, he realized how futile it all was. The beings around him had been traveling the stars when Earth's ancestors were still learning to make fire. The Zorathians spoke first, their mechanical voices echoing through translators that struggled to convert their complex language into something humans could understand. They were beings of pure energy housed in geometric shells that defied three-dimensional logic. Their representative, a creature that appeared to be a constantly shifting cube of light, pulsed with what Walker had learned, was amusement. "The humans seek membership in our tribunal," the Zorathian announced, and Walker heard what sounded like laughter from several species. "They bring their primitive vessels that burn chemical fuel and ask to sit among those who fold space itself." Walker kept his expression neutral, though inside he felt his determination hardening like steel. "Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel. We have established colonies on 17 worlds. We have developed peaceful relations with 6 neighboring species. A being that looked like a living nebula, constantly swirling with colors that hurt to perceive, spoke next. This was a Netherian, a species so old they claimed to have witnessed the birth of galaxies. Your faster-than-light travel is barely worthy of the name. You punch crude holes through subspace like barbarians breaking down doors. We dance through 11 dimensions as easily as you walk across a room." The chamber filled with more sounds of amusement. Walker noticed that even the translator systems seemed to mock them, converting the alien sounds into clearly condescending tones. He had known this would be difficult, but the sheer dismissiveness of these beings was worse than he had imagined. The Klaxori delegation, beings that appeared to be made of living metal with thoughts that moved at the speed of quantum entanglement, leaned forward. "Your weapons are projectiles and directed energy beams, how quaint. We restructure matter at the subatomic level. Your shields are electromagnetic bubbles. We wear armor made from folded spacetime. You are children playing with toys in a universe of giants." Walker straightened his shoulders. "Every species was young once. Even you had to take your first steps into space." "Indeed," said a creature that seemed to exist in multiple places at once, its form flickering between different positions in the chamber. This was an axiom, a species that had supposedly transcended physical form millennia ago. "But most species show potential from the beginning. Your mathematics still struggles with concepts we teach our offspring before they can speak. Your minds are trapped in linear time, unable to perceive the past and future as the single entity they truly are." The head of the tribunal, an ancient being known only as the architect, finally spoke. Its voice seemed to come from the fabric of reality itself, vibrating through dimensions that humans couldn't perceive. The architect was so old that some said it had helped design the current laws of physics. "The humans are denied. Return to your small sector of space. Perhaps in 10,000 years, if your species survives, you may petition again." Walker felt the dismissal like a physical blow. But he had one more card to play, though he hadn't planned to reveal it so soon. "Before I leave, honored members of the tribunal, I should inform you that we have recently detected an anomaly near our home system. Energy readings that our scientists cannot explain." The Zorathian's cube form flickered. "Another human accident, no doubt. Your experiments with forces you don't understand will likely destroy you before you can evolve." But Walker noticed something. The architect had gone very still. For a being that existed partially outside normal space-time, Going still was significant. What kind of anomaly? It asked, its voice carrying a note that might have been concern. Walker activated his holographic display, showing the readings that Earth's deep space sensors had picked up just 3 days ago. It appeared near Jupiter's orbit. Our instruments show it exists in what our scientists call a state of dimensional superposition. It seems to be, he paused, knowing how impossible this would sound. Infinite and infinitesimal simultaneously. The chamber, which had been filled with the subtle sounds of various alien physiologies, went completely silent. The axiom's multiple forms suddenly consolidated into one. The Netherian's swirling colors froze mid-motion. Even the Zorathian's constant geometric shifting stopped. The architect moved for the first time in the entire meeting, leaning forward in a motion that seemed to bend space. Around it, "Show me more." Walker displayed additional readings. The anomaly was growing, not in size exactly, but in complexity. It was as if someone was writing equations into the fabric of space itself, each equation more complex than the last, building something that existed in mathematical dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Impossible," whispered the Klaxori. "Those readings suggest, but no, it cannot be." "What?" Walker asked, feeling a shift in the room's dynamics. For the first time since he'd entered, the aliens weren't looking at him with condescension. They were looking at him with something that might have been fear. The architect stood, and when it did, Walker felt reality ripple around them. "You must leave immediately. Return to your world. Do not approach the anomaly. Do not attempt to study it, if it is what these readings suggest." But before the architect could finish, every screen in the chamber lit up with emergency signals. The anomaly near Jupiter had just increased its output by a factor of 1 trillion, and it was sending a message, broadcast on every frequency simultaneously, in every language known to the galaxy, and in some that weren't. The message was simple. "We have been waiting for those who can see without eyes, think without limits, dream without boundaries. We have found them. The humans are ready." Walker felt every alien gaze turn to him, and for the first time there was no mockery in their observation. There was something else entirely. Something that looked very much like envy. The Zorathian spoke, its voice no longer condescending but urgent. "You must tell us everything. When did this begin? Have your people had any contact with it?" Walker allowed himself a small smile. 3 days ago, our research vessel Pandora approached the anomaly. Captain Maria Santos reported that her crew experienced something unusual. They said they could suddenly understand mathematics that had no words, see colors that didn't exist, and hear music made of pure logic. The Netherian's colors began swirling frantically. The transcendence. After eons of silence, they return. But why now? Why for humans? The architect's voice carried across dimensions. Because humans have something we lost long ago in our evolution. They still dream of impossible things. They still believe in magic even as they practice science. They still see infinity as a challenge rather than a limit. Walker's communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. He read it quickly, his eyes widening. "Admiral," the message read, "the anomaly has opened. Something is coming through. It's beautiful. It's teaching us. We understand now. We understand everything." The tribunal chamber erupted in chaos. Some species were demanding immediate access to Earth space. Others were calling for a blockade. The architect raised what might have been an arm, and silence fell. "Admiral Walker," it said, its voice carrying the weight of eons, "your petition for membership is approved, but I suspect that very soon it will be us petitioning you." Walker nodded, his mind racing with the implications. Humanity had come, here as beggars. They might leave as teachers. The anomaly near Jupiter was more than first contact. It was first lesson. And apparently, humans were the only students in the galaxy who could understand the curriculum. As he turned to leave, the architect called out one more time, "Admiral, what did your Captain Santos say when she first encountered the anomaly?" Walker paused at the door. She said it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been, like remembering something she'd never learned, like finally understanding. A joke the universe had been telling since the beginning of time. The ancient being seemed to shimmer with something that might have been regret. We once felt that way, billions of years ago. We chose safety over wonder, logic over dreams. We evolved past the ability to see impossible things. Perhaps that is why they have chosen you. Walker left the tribunal chamber with his head held high. The beings who had mocked humanity would soon learn what humans had always known. Sometimes, the youngest child in the family sees things the older ones have forgotten how to see. Sometimes inexperience is its own form of wisdom. And sometimes, just sometimes, being primitive means being pure enough to touch infinity. The emergence of infinity. 3 months had passed since the anomaly opened near Jupiter, and Earth would never be the same. Dr. Yuki Tanaka floated in the observation chamber of the newly constructed Station Infinity, watching as the impossible ship took shape before her eyes. It wasn't being built in any conventional sense. Instead, it was being convinced to exist, coaxed into reality by human minds that had been touched by the transcendence. The beings that had emerged from the anomaly weren't physical in any way humans had previously understood. They were living mathematics, conscious equations that existed in the spaces between spaces. They communicated not through words or images, but through pure understanding. When they touched a human mind, that person suddenly knew things that couldn't be explained, only experienced. Yuki had been among the first 100 humans to interface with the transcendence. The experience had been overwhelming and beautiful, like suddenly being able to see after a lifetime of blindness. She understood now that reality was just one note in an infinite symphony, that dimensions were merely different ways of looking at the same eternal truth, and that consciousness itself was the force that convinced matter to dance in patterns called life. Captain Maria Santos floated beside her, her eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of the ship being born before them. "It's almost ready," she said, though her voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before her encounter with the transcendence. "Can you feel it singing?" Yuki nodded. The ship, if it could even be called that, was indeed singing. It was a harmony of mathematics and consciousness, a vessel that existed in infinite dimensions simultaneously, while choosing to manifest in just 3 for the convenience of its human operators. It was massive and microscopic, ancient and newly, born simple and infinitely complex. "The tribunal has sent another message," Santos said, pulling up a holographic display. "They're demanding access to the transcendence. The Zorathians are threatening military action if we don't share what we've learned." Yuki laughed, a sound that rippled through dimensions. "How can we share what can't be taught? The transcendence chose us not because we're special, but because we're still capable of not knowing. The other species know too much. Their certainty has become their prison." Around them, dozens of humans worked on various aspects of the ship, though worked wasn't quite the right word. They were dreaming it into existence, each mind contributing to a collective vision that the transcendents were helping them manifest. Engineers who had once struggled with conventional physics were now casually manipulating forces that shouldn't exist. Artists were painting with colors that existed only in mathematical dimensions. Musicians were composing symphonies that could only be heard by consciousness itself. Admiral Walker entered the chamber, his presence now carrying a weight that had nothing to do with rank. He had been transformed more than most. His consciousness stretched across dimensions in a way that let him perceive multiple timelines simultaneously. "The Infinity is ready for its first journey," he announced. "The Transcendents have given us coordinates." "Where?" Santos asked. Walker smiled, an expression that seemed to exist in more dimensions than a human face should allow. "The Galactic Tribunal. It's time to show them what humanity has become." The journey that should have taken weeks using conventional faster-than-light travel took no time at all. The Infinity didn't move through space. It convinced space that it had always been at its destination. One moment they were near Jupiter. The next they were approaching the massive structure that housed the Galactic Tribunal. The arrival of the Infinity sent shockwaves through every detection system in the sector. The ship was impossible to categorize. Sensors showed it as being larger than a moon and smaller than an atom simultaneously. Its mass readings fluctuated between 0 and infinite. It appeared to be made of solid matter, pure energy, and crystallized, thought all at once. Emergency transmissions flooded local space. The Zorathians scrambled their defensive fleets. The Netherians began charging weapons that could destroy stars. The Klaxori activated shields that could withstand supernovas. But the Infinity simply existed, peaceful and patient, waiting to be invited in. The architect's voice resonated across all frequencies. "What have you become?" Walker responded, his words carrying through normal space and several adjacent dimensions simultaneously. "We have become what we always were, just more aware of it. We request permission to address the tribunal." There was a long pause. Then, permission granted. The Infinity didn't dock with the station. Instead, it partially merged with it, existing, in the same space without occupying it. A paradox that made several species' computers crash trying to process it. Walker, Santos, Tanaka, and a dozen other transformed humans materialized in the tribunal chamber. Though materialized suggested they hadn't always been there, which wasn't entirely accurate anymore. The assembled species stared at the human delegation in something approaching awe. The humans still looked human, but they were more. Their eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. Their movements left traces in dimensions that most species couldn't perceive. When they spoke, their words carried meanings that bypassed language entirely. The Zorathian representative was the first to speak. "How? Your species lacks the evolutionary development, the mathematical understanding, the dimensional awareness." Tanaka answered, her voice harmonizing with itself across multiple timelines. "That's exactly why. You evolved past wonder. You developed beyond dreams. You understood so much that you forgot how to not understand. The transcendence needed minds that could still be surprised, still be awed, still believe in impossible things." The Netherians' colors fluctuated rapidly. "The transcendents are myths, legends from before the universe cooled. They can't be real." Santos laughed, and her laughter created small ripples in space-time. "They're not real in the way you understand reality. They exist in the mathematics that underlies existence. They are the consciousness that convinced chaos to become cosmos. And they've been waiting for a species that could hear their song without trying to understand it." The architect stood slowly, its ancient form trembling with something that might have been recognition. "I remember now. Before we became what we are, we could hear it too. The song of possibility. The mathematics of maybe. We evolved past it, thinking it was primitive. But it wasn't primitive. It was primal." Walker stepped forward, and as he did, the Infinity's presence could be felt throughout the station. "The Transcendents have a message for all species. The universe is entering a new phase. The rigid laws you've built your civilizations on are about to become flexible. Reality is about to remember that it's allowed to dream. And they've chosen humanity to be the bridge between what was and what will be." The Klaxori representative's metallic form resonated with alarm. "You're talking about the end of physics as we know it." "No," Tanaka corrected gently. "We're talking about the beginning of physics as it could be. The universe has been running on automatic for billions of years. The Transcendents are offering to hand over the controls to those brave enough to drive." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The species that had mocked humanity for their primitive technology were now facing a truth that terrified them. The humans hadn't just caught up. They had transcended the entire framework that defined advancement. The axiom, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke. "Will you teach us?" Walker consulted with something that existed just outside normal perception, then nodded. "We will try. But teaching isn't the right word. It's more like remembering. You have to remember how to forget everything you know. You have to learn to unlearn. You have to become primitive enough to touch infinity. Over the following days, representatives from every major civilization arrived at the tribunal station. The infinity grew to accommodate them all, its structure shifting and flowing like a living thing. Humans, once dismissed as barely worth noticing, were now the center of the galaxy's attention. But the transformation wasn't easy for the other species. The Zerathians' geometric perfection made it hard for them to accept paradox. The Netherians' ancient wisdom had become chains that bound their perception. The Klaxoris' quantum consciousness couldn't process the idea of being simultaneously right and wrong. Some succeeded. A young Zerathian, barely 1,000 years old, managed to perceive the first layer of transcendent mathematics and wept with joy. An ancient Netherian scholar deliberately forgot 10 billion years of accumulated knowledge and gasped as the universe became new again. A Klaxori engineer stopped trying to understand and started trying to feel, and suddenly could see the infinity's true form. But many couldn't make the transition. They were too evolved, too advanced, too certain. They watched in frustration as humans, with their primitive brains and limited senses, danced through dimensions they couldn't access, and spoke truths they couldn't hear. The architect addressed Walker privately as the transformation of the galaxy continued. You realize what this means? The old order is ending. The hierarchies based on technology and evolution are meaningless now. The galaxy will need new leadership, new vision. Walker nodded, his perception simultaneously in the present and several possible futures. We don't want to rule. We want to explore. The transcendents have shown us that our universe is just one note in an infinite symphony. There are other universes, other realities, other ways of being. Humanity's journey has just begun. And the rest of us? Those who can remember how to dream will come with us. Those who can't will continue as they were, though in a universe that's about to become much stranger. The architect seemed to age and grow young simultaneously. I was old when your star was born. I thought I had seen everything, known everything, but you've shown me that knowledge can be a prison, and ignorance can be freedom. Perhaps it's time for me to become primitive again. Walker smiled, an expression that existed in 17 dimensions. The transcendents have a saying, the wise know everything, the enlightened know nothing, and the transcendent know that knowing and not knowing are the same thing viewed from different angles. As the infinity prepared to depart on humanity's first journey beyond the known universe, thousands of beings from hundreds of species gathered to witness it. Some came to learn, some to wonder, and some simply to see the impossible made real. The ship that emerged from the station was no longer just humanity's vessel. It carried representatives from every species that had managed to touch transcendence, to remember wonder, to embrace ignorance as a path to infinite knowledge. But at its heart, in the command center that existed in all dimensions simultaneously, stood the humans who had made it all possible, not because they were the most advanced, but because they were advanced enough to still be primitive. Not because they were the wisest, but because they were wise enough to be foolish. Not because they were perfect, but because they were perfectly imperfect. As the infinity departed, it didn't disappear. Instead, it became more real, existing so completely that normal space couldn't fully contain it. Its journey would take it beyond the universe, into realms where physics was poetry and mathematics was music. The species that had mocked humanity now watched them leave with a mixture of awe, envy, and hope. The youngest children of the galaxy had become its teachers, showing the ancient races that evolution wasn't always about becoming more complex. Sometimes it was about becoming simple enough to see the complex truth that was always there. The last transmission from the infinity before it transcended completely was picked up by every receiver in the galaxy. It was Admiral Walker's voice, carrying harmonics from 1,000 dimensions. We'll be back, but not in any way you'll recognize. We'll be in the laughter of children who dream impossible dreams. We'll be in the moments when scientists forget what they know and discover what they don't. We'll be in the spaces between thoughts where infinity lives. Humanity isn't leaving. We're becoming the possibility that was always there, waiting for someone primitive enough to be transcendent. The infinity vanished and appeared, left and stayed, ended and began. And across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to dream began to remember, one impossible thought at a time.